Show me the river. Show me the river. That will be a great day.
Hello, I'm Stephen Proctor, and I'm here with my friend, actor, director, writer, composer, and now filmmaker, Michael St.John. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, how you doing, Guy?
Have a seat.
Thank you very much.
So, Mike, tell us, where did it all begin, Guy?
Don't you fucking lie to me. I heard what you did to Mama and my piano. And if you ever touch her again...
You'll what? Kill all! You gonna kill me! Still your father, boy. You ain't too old for an ass whooping.
Hi, everybody. I'm Michael St. John. You know, since my book, Hollywood Through the Back Door, has been out, I've been receiving messages from all over the world, from Manchester, England, from Paris, from Iceland, Australia, and of course from San Francisco, New York, and the Deep South. You'd be surprised. I get so many responses and questions about my life in Hollywood, my life in Philadelphia, or outside of Philadelphia as well. And I just want to, make sure that you guys understand that I appreciate your support. Yes, I was born in a place they call the Holler, outside of Philadelphia. It was a community of about 200 people, really. It was in the 30s, of course. And this is, I remember when I was about 4 or 5 years old, people were talking about Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Social Security, and I didn't quite understand what all that meant, but I remember those phrases and how it affected the people, you know. And in the Holler, blacks lived together, Greeks lived together, Italians, etc. And we lived in a, well, 2-room house, really. It was no electricity. It was oil lamps. It was a kitchen downstairs and 1 bedroom, and my sisters and brothers, we all, and mother and father, we all lived in and slept in 1 room. I remember that quite concisely. And there was, since there was no running water in the house, in the main house, we had to get our water from a little pipe, a water pipe that was rolling or moving from under a bridge or a highway there, I remember vaguely. And outside toilet with the outhouse, there was nothing like that at all. So therefore, we really had, we didn't realize that it was a rough time for it to exist, but this is what was there, and we accepted it, and we thought that was the way to survive. And it did make an impression. My grandmother lived about 2 or 3 blocks above us on a hill. It was a 2-story house there. And she had a piano there, and she worked as a maid. And my auntie, Hetty, was at Boston University, where she was studying music and other things. And when she came home to visit the family, she would play the piano, and of course that made a difference or impacted my interest as far as music is concerned, of course. My father, he was a typical black man at the time, or he was half black and half Italian. And he was a man who enjoyed alcohol and women, and it was sometimes difficult to get along with as far as the main family was concerned. And so I had a rough time with him, of course, because I was always trying to protect my mother when I felt she was hurt or when she needed to know that she had our support. And since I was the oldest, I had the initiative to step out and sometimes take the brunt of his anger or his disappointment or what they were going through. And sometimes I would go to bed red-faced or wounded physically or whatever. And at any rate, it was a challenge to survive. And it also made an impression on how the world was on the outside.
Try it, Daddy. I ain't that little boy no more. So come on. Let's see what you got, and you'll find out who I am. I remember Mama giving birth to Robbie. She was screaming in pain. And you were sitting on that fence with that bottle of whiskey. And when Big Ben pulled me in that outhouse, remember? He pulled me in there and you did nothing. Nothing. You just sat there and drank. Even when his dick was ripping me apart, you did nothing. Why? The blood oozed down my leg. I was in pain for weeks.
So, Michael, what impacted your life most growing up at an early age in a place like Green Tree Holler?
I'm going to tell you, Steve, all of that because I got to tell you, my father was an alcoholic. And of course, anyone who has that kind of problem, there's always a fallout in a negative way as far as the family is concerned. And because I was the oldest, I was very sensitive about everything he did and how he reacted to my mother and to my few siblings that were alive at the time, you know. So that was something very, very, had an effect on my personality. After all, I was only about 6 years old when I was confronted with a neighbor who was called Big Ben. And Big Ben took advantage of me and raped me when I was 6 years old. And since, as I told you, we didn't have an indoor toilet, and he took me in an outhouse and he raped me there. My father was close by watching the whole thing. He was drinking a bottle of gin or whatever, it was alcoholic. He watched me scream and yell and cry for help, and he just sat there on the fence and watched this Big Ben pull me in the outhouse and do what he had to do. When I was bleeding and I was yelling for help, I had no one to come to help me. And later on, I watched Big Ben from my bedroom window get stabbed to death. I don't know if it's because it was a rumor what he had done or whatever, but he got in a fight with another member of the community, the small community, and he was stabbed and I saw him die. And then not too long after that, I was raped again by an Italian guy, and he invited me over for a little lunch because I was supposed to be special kids of Green Tree Hollow, and the lunch he wanted was not a pizza, I'll tell you that. And from that moment on, I was suspicious of anybody who wanted to give me lunch or anything else. And you can imagine at that time, being 6 years old, and not only that, there was a little girl who asked me to feel her private parts, and I did. And when I went home and I had dinner with the family, they wondered why I only ate with my left hand. I was right-handed, you know, because I couldn't raise my hand. I was afraid of this hand, you know. And that's the truth. I'm just telling you. See, when you're a kid, all of this leaves an impression on you. And I was suspicious of everybody, women and men as well, because I thought, what did they want of me? And I knew exactly I was suspicious because I felt strange. And I wanted to tell my grandmother, but I was afraid to tell my grandmother. I always had an open conversation with my grandmother. I trusted her tremendously, but when it came to body functions and sex that they whispered about, but of course adults don't really understand that young people, they do hear and they conjure up images and things like that. So I grew up, with a father who was an alcoholic, who was had a temper, was always a fight in the house. My mother was always crying and bleeding or so. And here I was 5 or 6 years old wondering what could I do to help mom, And when I tried to, I got kicked around on the floor or slapped down or got the strap, and I would go and hide while she was crying, etc. And when I saw her bruised, her face was bruised, her arms were bruised, and she was bleeding, and no one came to help her because this was the kind of community, they understood what was going on, but they stayed to themselves unless my mother escaped the house and ran to a neighbor's house and hid there until my father sobered up, and I watched that, And being the oldest, even at 5 or 6 years old, it makes a difference how you see the world. It makes a difference how you see, we wonder how you would fit in a world like this. So the normal kind of existence and relationships I never had, because my body was always seemed up for grabs. I was self-conscious. They said I was different. They thought I was cute, and I heard them talking, and the men too, and some of the women. It was very disturbing. And some of my times my father would have relationships with some of the known prostitutes of the community. Yes, of a small community like that. And I would see him go off with, especially one that was called Sophie. She always wore green. And I watched my father go and really have an affair with her in her house. And my mother had suspicions of it, or maybe one of her female friends warned her of what was going on, and my mother went and threw rocks through the window when he was having an affair with Sophie. And my father jumped from the second-story window of the house and ran in the woods, stark naked. When I watched that, I was confused completely. I didn't know exactly what to believe or think about the world I was in at all. My only relief for happiness was when my Aunt Hetty came from Boston University to visit the family, and she played the piano music, and she talked to me about music. I asked questions because I was curious, and that was something that gave me a lift. But living in Green Tree Hollow was hell, because I was a victim of guys and some of the women and young girls there who wanted to take advantage of me. I felt as if I was something odd, something different, something. And they loved the way I spoke. They say, he speaks like he doesn't belong here or whatever. And that bothered me tremendously, because I said, how was I supposed to talk? How was I supposed, because I like music, and we didn't have electricity in the house, and the only thing I could rely on as far as knowing about the world and what was out there to expect, what came from my aunt, who was in Boston, and she would come and talk about her experiences there with music and going seeing shows in New York. I dreamt and fantasized about that, and classical music and some of the great artists, etc. But that was the bright side. And then when my aunt died from childbirth, that really upset me as well, because that's when I began to imagine all sorts of things. Because on her funeral day, when she was buried, and I was all by myself in the front yard of my grandmother, I thought I heard my aunt's voice, Aunt Hetty's voice, and that made a difference. She called Sonny, Sonny, Sonny. And I thought my mother was calling me, so I ran to my mom. I said, Mom, you should call me. She says, no. I knew for the first time that there was something else that I didn't understand that human life could experience. There was the world of spirits or whatever. But from that moment on, I knew that I had a way of extending some sort of connection with another world that weren't existing, that we could touch or feel, or possibly we could hear, and if you're lucky, you could see. So I had a lot of these things conjured up in my mind, and I was mixed up, I was confused, and I was abused because my father always hit me first. He always went to me first because he knew I didn't like him. I didn't like the man because he hurt my mother, and that made me have my feelings. Then I began to wet the bed. I began to stutter. I began to have nightmares. and I began to stay away from people. I was a loner, you know. And my father, at every time he tried to harm my mother, that's when it confused me more, and that's when I got it too, because I would bash him if I could. I would stand between them and he'd knock me down to the floor. And when my mother was pregnant again, I watched him knock her down a pair of stairs. It was awful. And my brother was born, of course, luckily, but it was quite an experience. And we had to finally move because of a fight they had. It was too brutal. And we stayed in various places until we moved to a place called Morton, Pennsylvania, which was about 10 miles from Philadelphia. Life was hopefully going to be different, but it wasn't. It was the same play all over again. It was more fights. I had to escape to the neighbor's house, and I got to know so many people in the town. When I was about, say, 12 years old or 11 years old, I became a paper boy. So therefore, I was the town's paper boy. I knew everybody in town. I served the Chester Times to every house in the town. That's how I got extra money. But when I went to a school called Phyllis Weekly School, it was an all-black school from the 1st to the 8th grade. And I'm glad that I did, because it taught me about Paul Robeson, Mary Dandis, and Roland Hayes. Some of the great scientists, black scientists, some of the people who had come from slavery and fought against it and survived and educated themselves. Now that really enlightened me. That really made me think that I might have a chance to survive in the world, you know. But because we broke in school at noontime, I would have to go home, like most of the kids did, for an hour break for lunch. It's a small town, Morton was. And I'd go home, see my mother lying on the floor in a pool of blood, or she was crying, or she had cuts on her arms, or she's bleeding from something horrible in her face, and I would be shaking. That's when my stuttering got worse. Then I'd go back to school, and when I was in 3rd grade, I couldn't pass the grade. Then I was left back in 3rd grade because I would experience all this heinous experience with my father. I'd go back to school and sit there. If I had a test in 3rd grade, I couldn't pass it. It was impossible, because I was fighting the image I saw when I went home for lunch. So I was left back, and my sister caught up with me in the 3rd grade, so we graduated together. In the 8th grade, that's when we went to a mixed school, you know, with whites and blacks. So that's when, and I went to a school called Swarthmore. And Swarthmore only accepted the brightest kids, no matter where they're from, in that part of Pennsylvania. You know, Morton, Pennsylvania, Chester, Media, Derby, and they only accepted the best students. So I was one. My sister and I were the students accepted at the same time. And even at Swarthmore, I was accepted as, well, I was voted the class president of my freshman class. And because they saw that I was a little bit different, I had a teacher by the name of Miss Matthews. That's in my play, Hollywood, my play, and also in my book, and I Feel Sin coming on, that we're working on now. And the book, of course, is hopefully going to be a film or a miniseries. But Miss Matthews played a very important part in my life. She insisted that I appear in the senior play, and as the first black, and there were only a few blacks in that school, and it was a very, just like going to a Harvard or Yale, the high school system itself. And I wanted to play, she selected, insisted I play Hamlet in the play, and that was a shock for the student body and for the town of Swarthmore. It was a shock. They said, how could you select this black kid to play Hamlet? Hamlet of all the characters of Shakespeare, because Miss Matthews said, because he's talented, he can do it. He's better than all the other students we have here at Swarthmore. And so the anger and all the other things that came up because of that announcement my mother had to go to Swarthmore and deal with the principal because it was pretty horrible. I mean, they tried to attack my family home in Morton. The rocks were thrown through the window. My mother they was trying to run her down in the car. And I was threatened by some of the townspeople of Swarthmore, and that's when the real face of Swarthmore was shown, because it never before, their ideal, what should be, was challenged. And Miss Matthews, this white teacher, said, no, this guy, this kid in this class is exceptional, he's going to play it, otherwise I will resign from Swarthmore High School. And that changed the whole scene right there, and especially when she and my mother got together and confronted the principal, Mr. Thompson, and some of the board members of the school. So when I played and did the play, Hamlet, they painted me white, makeup, and that's how I did it. So I said, my mother says, I don't care what you do to him, he's going on that stage. And it was quite a challenge there. But then I had... after that, I had to get friends from Swarthmore College, which was right across the road from Swarthmore High School. So I became friends of Swarthmore College because they were very liberal. They accepted me and who I was. Then too, I was doing radio shows and television shows. I was on the Paul Whiteman TV Teen Club show. Paul Whiteman discovered Bing Crosby, people like that. And he had a show at WFIL, which was, I think it was with the extension of CBS or NBC. But then I was doing a children's hour, a radio show, and that was quite exciting. So I was on television on Saturday, people would recognize me, and on Sunday I was on radio. So I did have, a following of sorts, and this is another reason why Miss Matthews thought that this would be interesting to shock the whole student body. It was an extraordinary experience, but it was still, it took an emotional, it was emotionally very stressful for me, because it seemed to me no matter what I did and what I decided to do or what I was accepted to do, it was a challenge to follow through. There was always a group of people who wanted to stop me or make me feel insignificant or make me feel because of my color that I didn't deserve to have it. So from my childhood, going through regular school and going through high school, I was a war to prove that I deserved to be what I wanted to be. And I really, because of my aunt really, who died very early, really her experience as a musician, she's a brilliant musician, and the way she talked to me about the future and what was possible if I made up my mind that I wanted to do it, that I should do it no matter what. So I didn't have a normal beginning. My beginning was proving that I could be, that I was qualified, that I had to, that because of my mother and my grandmother, who was extremely supportive, I had to really make them know that I could make them happy, that the family could be recognized as special, because the whole town of Morton sort of supported me as well, no matter what I did, because I was on radio, I was on television, I got into Swarthmore, and all those things that most people or young people were not getting an opportunity for, So from the time I left high school and got into Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana, but then there was Richmond, Indiana. I was voted the class president, the first black class president of that Quaker college, Earlham College. And it was wonderful as far as the students were concerned. Of course, you had some challenges from the other guys who wanted to be class president too. Well, it's normal for guys or women, or it doesn't matter. When you're in college, you're going to have challenges and people who really want to better you or whatever. But I may not find them. But at homecoming parade, unfortunately, the townspeople there were some KKK members there, and they, at homecoming, they confronted me and some of my class people. And they threw rocks, they threw bats, they threw produce, they do other things as well, and they want to attack my class, and I was marching down Main Street, you know, with my other class members, and some fights broke out, and the guys and my buddies, Harold Vizino and another buddy of mine there, they got me out of the parade and the homecoming parade, and got me out back on campus and took me to the dean's house, and they hid me in the attic of the dean's house because they were fearful about it because of the action of the KKK. And the good things that they did.
It was so bad, it hurt, and I cried every time I sat on the toilet.
You made this shit up.
I was sick.
You damn lie, boy! You damn lie! You dreamed up all this shit.
You know it's the truth. You know what happened. The truth is, you've never been a father to me. You're just a body walking in and out with that damn bottle of whiskey.
Well, I'll tell you, being in the attic of Dean Curtis at Earlham College, it was quite an experience. It brought back memories of running away and hiding from my father. Now I'm at my college, and I'm in the attic of the dean, hiding from the KKK. I mean, really. And then they were trying to figure out what they should do to make me safe. My class, friends, the Dean Curtis was trying to figure out what he could do to make darn sure that nothing would happen. But then suddenly, an explosion occurred. The KKK members, or a few of them, got to the campus, and they firebombed my dorm room. That was something to behold. I was nearly paralyzed in fear. I was scared to death. So Dean Curtis says, "No, we're going to do something about this. You won't be able to stay here because this is horrible." So he contacted a friend of his at USC and explained to him what was going on, what had happened, and the friend, who was quite powerful at USC, insisted that they organize things very quickly and get me away from Richmond, Indiana, and get to USC. And so most of my class got together, raised money, and then Dean Curtis, he gave money as well, and I was put in a truck and hidden in the back of the truck of a college truck, and got me to the Greyhound depot, and I was off to Los Angeles. And that's how I got to Los Angeles. And when I got to USC, my whole life changed, the whole world changed, you know. But of course, I didn't realize I would be confronted with as many challenges in California as I was confronting in Pennsylvania. Because when I got to USC, it was exciting. It was a different world completely, and it was a different look, definitely. And again, I was immediately chosen to be one of the few persons of color that they accepted on that campus, and I was accepted in the marching band, the Trojan Band. I was accepted because I could perform. They knew about my performing with Paul Whiteman, his TV show, Teen Club show. They knew about my radio experience, and I was introduced to some of the main people that USC was connected with. A lot of very famous people who came to the campus. You know, Shostakovich from Russia, when he visited, the composer, when he visited the campus, I was asked to perform for him with Marilyn Horne, and I call her Jackie Horne. She eventually became a member of the Metropolitan Opera Company in New York, and we also worked together. She was the voice of Dorothy Dandridge in Carmen Jones, and I was T-Bone in the film. So again, we became comrades of sorts, you know. And there were other people as well, very famous people, very famous violinists and pianists and other vocalists. We all seemed to gravitate to each other. I was in an opera, La Coque d'Or, and I think it was the San Francisco Opera Company, and they chose me as one of the students to perform in the opera as well. So I was getting experiences, enormous experiences then, you know. And eventually, when I graduated, before I graduated, I had appeared in with Ethel. Oh no! Well, first of all, I got connected with the Ebony Showcase Theater, and that was helmed and produced by Nick Stewart, who was Lightning on Amos and Andy, one of the first black TV sitcoms or comedy shows on television. And Nick Stewart that came to see me on one of my performances at USC, and he and his wife Edna decided that they should try to support me and I should become a part of their theater. And in their theater, I met people like Nat King Cole, Ethel Waters, and people, Hazel Scott, James Edwards. The list goes on. And all those people, you know, they saw things in me and then supported me and gave me suggestions about what I should do with my career. I was really alone in Los Angeles. And so I just walked the streets by myself. I made decisions based on, you know, suggestions from other people who were really recognizable names or respected in the film industry, and directors and producers and actors, etc. I was extremely lucky. And when I performed with my first show, I performed with Carnival Island, and that was quite wonderful because we had Ted Lang, his son, and I became friends with as well when he did Love Boat. He was the black guy on Love Boat, and he was a fine director. He turned out to be a fine director, a very good actor as well, naturally. And I got the support of his father. He was just a kid, and so when I found out that he was Love Boat, I looked at him, and he looked just like his father, and just as kind and considerate, and he supported me all the way. It was very, very special, you know. James Edward, who did Home of the Brave, one of the first black leading men, Home of the Brave, you know, and he was my director in a play. We didn't get along very well, but he was supportive. I learned a lot from him, and I did Remember the Wedding with Ethel Waters, and I had some trying times with her, but with my background, standing up myself, I didn't hold back my opinions or my words, and when I felt something wasn't going right for me, where other actors would have sense enough to keep quiet and listen, when I felt a scene was going wrong, and something didn't happen the way I felt it should go as far as my character was concerned, I would speak up. And they gave me a rough time, but they still respected me, which was rather important, you know. And so Nick Stewart, he liked me so much, and he saw how I operated around the theater, the Ebony Theater, and so he contacted some of his friends at the CBS, which was on Sunset Boulevard, next door to NBC at the time, and got me. I was the first black or person of color to be a part of the script department at CBS, and we did the radio show. It was radio. They had shows with Lionel Barrymore, the mayor of the town, shows like that, and Marie Wilson, the Marie Wilson show, Maisie, and all of those shows. I met Orson Welles and people like that, and they seemed to gravitate to me. But there was one rule that they had, that if you were an employee of CBS, you could not audition for any of the radio shows. Of course, Michael St.John decided that he would be the one to break the rules, naturally. So I changed my name and everything, auditioned, got the role as narrator for a major, big-time radio show, you know. The Prophet, Khalil Gibran, the author, Indian author. And so I was a hit. They said, "Who is this guy?" You know, people were asking. And I was scared to death. I kept quiet, you know, because I didn't want people to find out that I broke the rules. Break the rules, you suffer the consequences. And when he found out that it was Michael St. John who changed his name, and he was the one who did the narrator, because people were calling in about this guy who was the narrator of The Prophet. And they did some investigation, and they found out it was me. So Miss Todesca, will never forget. Miss Todesca got hold of me, asked me to come to her office. And I came to her office. She says, "You know what you did, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, Miss Todesca." "You know what's going to happen, don't you, Michael?" I said, "Yes, Miss Todesca. You're fired. But I'll tell you, I like you so much. I like your balls. I'm going to introduce you to Sam Heiliger, who was a psychic of Mary Pickford, the founder of the motion picture industry, along with, with all the great, other people, Sam Goldwyn and all those people." And so I said, "Okay, fine." I was from Morton, Pennsylvania. It's like Green Tree Hollow. And if you wanted something, I was trained to go out and get it. And I left the studio, and I was a little bit upset about it, naturally. But then I had an attitude, naturally. So I met Sam Heiliger. He was a doctor. And he says, "Yeah, I heard about you. You don't try any things over here. Please, Michael, be nice. Don't pull any tricks, because you're known to do certain things. You know what I'm talking about, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, I know." I listened to him open street, and I said, "Yeah, I know." And so he had a couple of meetings, and he has told everybody that Mary Pickford was going to make an appearance at the house, because he had a huge house off of Wilshire Boulevard. Marvelous house. He was a black guy, by the way, and he was secretly the adopted brother of Mary Pickford. So that was very unusual at the time. Mary Pickford, and one of the founders of the motion picture industry, with all these Lasky from Paramount, and Sam Goldwyn, Louis B. Mayer, all these people even started the business. And so she came. She was quite nice, Miss Pickford. She asked me to call her Mary. I said, "No, Miss Pickford. I have respect for older people." It's true. When you brought up to where, like I was brought up, dressed persons who were, of that age and accomplishment as by their first name. And so I, quickly let her know that. She smiled. She's, of course. And after a couple of meetings, and because Dr. Heiliger always gave readings to the industry, so some of the very famous people came to those readings during the evenings. Some of the famous contract actors of the time, from MGM and from 20th Century Fox, the regular major studios, Paramount Studios. And so one of those meetings, Miss Pickford heard me sing, and she says, "I like how you speak, and I like how you perform. Would you like to work with me on a project? I'm giving a charity fashion show, and I would like you to assist me in producing it, Michael. You can call some of the famous people, the celebrities of Hollywood, and make sure they come and support the whole thing." I said, "Well, I'd love to do that, but you will also have to help me get some of the acts for the charity show." I said, "Well, yeah, I'd like to do that as well." So I helped Miss Pickford to get some singers and dancers and people like that. And I called Jane Russell, I called Debbie Reynolds, I called Lana Turner, I called a lot of those people. They all said yes. Mary Pickford beckoned, you run to support her. So I realized suddenly what power was in Hollywood, and who was respected. And Mary Pickford then, of course, this was in 1953, I think it was. And then she was still walking around, moving about, and she, she was one of the top social people, and because she was the madam lady of the industry. It was quite interesting to watch what she could do and what she could accomplish just because of being Mary Pickford, And she was married to Fairbanks Sr., and her stepson was Junior, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. And so it was very interesting to the history of their relationship. And Pickfair, of course, everybody in the world had heard about Pickfair, and I was always up there talking with her about people I had called and people who were too busy to help her with her project, etc. It was quite a learning experience, And I liked the idea of helping her organize, which means that she trusted me speaking and relating her feelings to very important other producers and directors and stars in Hollywood. So even at 18 years old, I had this opportunity. So therefore, I've been fortunate to keep things rolling in Philadelphia doing the radio show and the television show. Then I was fortunate enough to get to USC and meet some very important people there, and also eventually meet, people who opened the door to Mary Pickford and be the first, person to do what I had to do at CBS and on radio. So I was rather lucky, But then I had heard that Otto Preminger was going to produce a film called Carmen Jones. With Dorothy Dandridge and Harry Belafonte. And there was a role of T-Bone in the film, and I felt that I could play the part, And so I contacted Otto's office. His office was at 20th Century Fox Studio. So I called and set up an appointment. I got over there, and I went to his office, and he says, "What do you want? I know I've heard about you. What do you want to see me for?" I said, "Because you are going to do Carmen Jones, and I can play one of the roles." He says, "What role is that, young man?" I said, "T-Bone." "Why would you want to play T-Bone? Who are you?" I said, "I'm one of the best actors in Hollywood." He said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yes, oh, really?" He said, "Don't make fun of me." I said, "I'm not making fun of you. I'm telling you that I'm a talent actor. You'd be a fool not to hire me." He says, "What?" He starts smiling, laughing. He said, "I want you to read for me." So he brought out a script, and I read the part of T-Bone. He says, "I can't believe it. You're good." I said, "When can we sign a contract?" He says, "Contract? What are you talking about, contract? You just read for me. What are you talking about? I'm going to read other actors." I said, "No, you're not. You're going to hire me, Mr. Preminger." "I am going to do what?" I said, "You are going to hire me." He said, "Get out of my office." I said, "No, Mr. Preminger, please. When can I get the contract?" He was outraged. He was laughing. He said, "I don't believe I'm having you still in my office." He says, "Would you please leave my office?" I said, "Will you please give me a call to tell me when I can start rehearsals?" He says, "Well, what?" It was hilarious. It was like a play written. And I don't believe even now that I had the nerve, the guts, the balls to confront Otto Preminger with his accent telling me to get out of his office. And I said, "No, you're going to tell me whether I have this part or not." And I finally got up and left. And so Helen, his assistant, she said, "What was on in that?" She says, "Otto had never screamed like that. And you were screaming back. What were you two?" I said, "I told him I want the part of T-Bone." He said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah." She says, "Why?" I said, "Because I'm the only person who could play that part the way it should be played." And she says, "Good luck, kid, good luck." And so from that, the next day, I called. I said, "Any word about the contract?" She says, "Mike, please." And actually, my name was Sandy at the time, and they changed it to Michael after I did the film, But I was Sandy Lewis. And she says, "Well, Sandy, I'm going to tell you something. You wait until I get a call. You get a call." I said, "Okay." Then it was announced in the trades that they were starting the rehearsals and going to start shooting on the first scenes of Carmen Jones with Dorothy Dandridge and Harry Belafonte and Pearl Bailey and all the rest of the stars. It was filled with black stars, noted people who had been recognized, okay? So I called the office and I asked Helen. I said, "Helen, I'm calling about my contract." She says, "Cool it, because Mr. Preminger is in no mood to fight with you. So please, Sandy, just be cool." I said, "Okay." So I decided to have posters with my picture on it saying that I was the greatest actor in Hollywood. And I took about 50 posters that were printed that some of my friends paid for. I went to RKO where they were shooting the film, and I took down John Wayne's picture, replaced John Wayne's picture with my picture. I went in all of the studio lot, putting my picture all over the lot. It was a shock to everybody. They said, this guy, all the black actors were, "Oh my God, you see what that kid has done." He has his picture in the hallway, in the entrance of the studio. He took down John Wayne's picture. He took down Susan Hayward's picture. He has his pictures every place. I thought it was perfect. Pearl Bailey laughed her ass off. She said, "I don't believe he's done this. Michael or Sandy, what have you done?" I said, well, Pearlie Mae, I want the part. I'm going to get it one way or the other. And when Otter heard about it, because everybody went to Otter, what are you going to do about this kid? He says, nothing. And so 2 or 3 days before the picture started with me in it, I had gotten no word at all from Helen. So I called Helen, and she wasn't in her office. So I told Pearlie Mae, Pearl Bailey, who had really adopted me practically, fed me when I was hungry and everything else. And she says, kid, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going up to his office. It's a break. She said, I don't think you should do that, honey. I said, I'm going up there, Pearlie Mae. I'm going to confront Otto with a German accent and everything else. She said, oh my God. She said, oh, it's going to be a fight today. I went up to his office, and Helen wasn't there. I saw a little light seeping from his office. I pushed the door open and caught Otto Preminger and Dorothy Dandridge having an affair on the sofa. And I said, oh my God. Oh, I'm so sorry, Mr. Preminger. Oh, yes. And he started zipping up, and she started fixing her blouse, and I was backing out, and I was backed into the wall, and I pushed the door open and almost fell down the stairs. It was on the 2nd floor, and I ran down to Pearlie Mae's, or Pearl Bailey's dressing room. And she said, what is wrong with you, boy? I said, they're doing it, they're doing it, they're doing it. She said, oh, they're doing it. Oh, Pearlie Mae, they're doing it. What are you talking about? She said, I said, you know what they're doing, but I can't say in public. She said, you mean, uh-huh? She said, I'm going to tell you, if you want to do T-bone and drag, you got the part, boy. And the next day, Helen saw me coming on the lot, and she said, come here, Mike, come here, Sandy. I said, yeah, Helen, you got the part. Mr. Preminger wants you to come up to the office and sign the contract. I said, oh, really? She says, oh, yes, oh, really? And then when Pearlie Mae heard about it, Dorothy Dandridge heard about it, and Harry Belafonte were fit to be tied. Now, Pearl Bailey was nice about it, but Dorothy Dandridge, she says, he did something like that. This is blackmail, you know. And Harry says, yes, that little, you know, the word starts S with an S. That little, yes, he did do it. And they were really out of sorts. They couldn't stand the idea that I got that part the way I got it. But I mean, he gave me the idea that I was perfect for the part. When I read for him, he made me believe that his way, that I should have the part, so I didn't let him forget it. And so it was the talk of the whole cast. Do you hear about that kid, Sandy? He really should change his name. So really, my name was changed because of that outrageous thing I did getting Carmen Jones, because it's going on. And they decided maybe he should change the name to something else. So my agent at the time, Glenn Shaw, he says, Michael, I got word from the studio, etc. And a lot of people think that you should have a different name. You should do it. You have a family name that you can associate with that. I said, yeah, St. John. He said, well, why don't you change to Michael St. John, you know? It's more glamorous and outrageous, etc. So that's how I really got the name of Michael St. John. But because of Otto Preminger and my relationship, getting the part, and the way that I got publicity after that, because so many things happened after that, it was pure, you know, luck and chutzpah, because I found out quite early, if you don't have guts enough to believe in yourself, you'll stay where you are in no man's land. As a person who keeps trying and hoping and dreaming, and that's the extent of your career. So that was the real beginning of my career in Hollywood, was dealing with Otto Preminger and standing up to him. Yes, I was a little fearful afterwards of what might happen naturally, but it didn't stop me from, you know, doing what I had to do, but it opened the door for me to do other things as well with Shirley Booth, the desk cassette. You know, we had our battle on stage as well. You know, she wanted me to play, she knew I could play the piano, and I was the office boy in the Broadway show. And I decided I didn't like the song that she wanted me to play, and so she could sing it. She wanted me to play "I'm in the Mood for Love." I wanted to play another song. What was the song? I don't remember quite well. Anyhow, during the opening of the show at the Carthay Circle Theater in Beverly Hills, we went on stage. She started singing the song that she wanted to play. sing, and I would decide, oh, since I could only play one song, I still can't remember the song. I started playing that song, and it was in contrast to each other, and the audience loved it. The more I played my song that I knew I could play, the louder she sang. The audience began to applaud and laugh, and the director loved it. She was furious.
What was the name of that song, Mike?
Oh, the song that I knew was "Somebody Loves You," maybe. Somebody loves you. Somebody loves you, and she wanted to sing "I'm in the Mood for Love." I insisted on naturally "Somebody Loves You," the Gershwin song, because I was a tremendous fan of George Gershwin, because I had met the IRA over at Sam Goldwyn Studios, and Andre Previn and all those people. They loved Gershwin music as well. But Miss Booth, Shirley Booth, wanted "I'm in the Mood for Love," because that's what she did when she opened on Broadway. And I told her that I cannot play "I'm in the Mood for Love," but she insisted that I try. So when we opened at the Carthay Circle Theater, as I said before, I started playing in that scene, the party scene, "Somebody Loves You." She came out and sang "I'm in the Mood for Love." She looked at me, I looked at her, and I still played "Somebody Loves You." She still sang "I'm in the Mood for Love." We had a challenge, and we went back and forth. She marched and tranced around my piano, pointing her finger at me, saying, "I'm in the mood for love," and I punched out, "Somebody loves you," whatever. And the audience knew there was something going on the stage that they didn't expect, and they started laughing and applauding, and the scene was marvelous, because people even involved in the scene, they knew we were at war. And see, they sort of, they sort of played along with the whole game of things, and it was a great new scene that we created. And of course she was furious, but everybody else was very happy. The audience gave the whole scene a standing ovation when the curtain went down. She stormed off stage, Miss Booth did, and went to her dressing room and started yelling in the dressing room, "How dare he do this? I'm the star of this play, the Descent, not Michael St. John." And so, but the director came to me and said, "You do exactly what you did before. Never has the scene gotten that kind of response, even in New York." And I said, "All right," but I was a little scared, because after all, she was a major star. She got an Oscar. She was going to a series of Hazel, her TV series, and everything like that. So it was quite a challenge for me, but I did it. But that kind of nerve and determination really kept me going in Hollywood, because it got around that I had chutzpah, that I had enough balls to do what I felt an actor should do. If you're an actor, you should protect yourself, because only you will allow your name to rise with some sort of dignity and a decent response from the audience and from the paying audience out there, or people reading the newspapers, the reviewers. And I was since I was a part of the newspaper business, I realized what they say and how they handle things. So I said, well, I'm going to play the game as I felt deep in my heart, It's because when I got this role, I was still at USC. I was still at the Ebony Showcase Theater, and I was doing all sorts of jobs to stay alive. But I knew the game of all those respective jobs and positions artistically, and as far as the industry was concerned. So I knew how to stay in the game and make people respond to me. And a lot of the other actors just came, did their part, and hoped that their agents would get them another job. I never depended on an agent. When I felt I wanted a job, I'd go after the producer or whomever was responsible for hiring. That was my chain of thought. But after that, I got other jobs very quickly. And it was in the Ethel Waters job. Was very important to me. They remembered the wedding, as I said. And I felt that was very important. And it was a battle with Ethel as well. And she didn't expect me to come off as I did with her in our scenes together. But I decided that, you know, I had artistic, creative ideas about making the character real and interesting, and I did. She didn't like some of the things I did on stage, and she threw a chair at me. I threw the chair back. The audience gasped in shock, you know, but they loved every minute of it, so I realized that. And the director liked it very much. So, I mean, I had difficulty with Ethel Waters, the Ethel Waters, and also with Shirley Booth, and they all were award-winning actors, you know, in the industry, you know. My deal with David Wayne with Finian's Rainbow, I had my problems with some of the actors there, but David Wayne was wonderful. He laughed and enjoyed my antics. He thought they were antics, but some of the things I did in the musical were just honest mistakes that worked with the scene or with the play, musical play, and the audience went overboard. And that's how really I got to work with Ethel Waters. She said, "You have a lot of nerve, guy." She says, "But please remember that I'm the star of Remember the Wedding and not you." I said, "Of course, you know." And I didn't plan anything, but I just did things the way I have always done to survive, because I knew it takes knowing yourself and your talent and your determination, you know, to get things done. And from those earlier years, that's how it has always worked, you know. And even when I was at SC, I wanted to be in the nightclubs, all right? And so I found that most of the young students on the campus, they had family at the studios. They had members who were working in quite powerful positions at MGM, at 20th Century Fox, at Columbia, at Warner Brothers. And that's how, when they graduated or when they were in school, they were able to get positions of significance. So when they did graduate, they could walk right into those positions and sort of follow in their parents' footsteps. So I said I was Lena Horne's son. And that's how I got to appear and open on Sunset Strip in The Purple Onion. And the only person who knew that I wasn't Lena Horne's son was Hedda Hopper and the black press. So when I opened, it was flooded with people wondering how I was going to carry this off. So I had my name on, you know, on the marquee. Hedda Hopper gave me some a bit of a write-up in her column. Luella Parsons scorned me because she says, I have doubts about this, but Hedda Hopper thought it was fun, so she went along with me, because I had met her earlier in New York when I was vying to get into shows there in New York, and an actress, a very famous, Tallulah Bankhead, introduced me, and because of her friend, mutual friend, Alan Craig, a music director, took me to her house, and she offered me a drink. I think when I was about 13 years old. And when I met her, she says, "What do you drink?" It was some gin. I said, "Excuse me," because I was not. And so my friend said, "No, he's only 13 years old." She said, "Oh, darling, what do you drink?" I said, "Juice, orange juice." She says, "Really?" She was shocked. She said, "Okay, darling, give me have it." So I said, and I laughed, and Erwin laughed, and we had a lot of fun. But I met Tallulah Bankhead many years later in Hollywood. She remembered our meeting in New York, you know, and it was wonderful, you know. So, but when I got to Hollywood, I was determined to deal with all the things I had learned in New York and in Philadelphia, and things of that sort, you know. And when I got to Hollywood as well, I just picked up those antics and my determination, and I went and got roles that other black actors didn't get. You know, I appeared at the Hollywood Bowl, like I said, and, you know, in honor of President Eisenhower. And I remember, you know, being at Earlham College, you know, when he was running for office in '52, and what things happened there with the KKK, and all those things sort of flushed in my mind. But I had to do all sorts of things to stay alive in Hollywood. And even on the USC campus, you know, I just went out and auditioned all the time and met people and to let them know that I was here in town, I was ready to take over. And a lot of people resented it because I was too pushy, they said too aggressive, but I didn't care what they said because I was trying to survive. But I met Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington and Dinah Shore and and like I said, and then Sugar Child Robinson, and a lot of the great people, and Johnny Ray and Eddie Fisher. I had worked with him, as I noted earlier. And I mean, all those things that it took me and my determination to get auditions, and I was accepted on those shows, so I was learning at the same time. I may not have been as good as I pontificated, but once I got on the shows, I sort of kept quiet, and I observed what they did and how they handled themselves. So when it was time for me to perform, I just sort of copied what they did, and I had their attitude about rehearsals and things of that sort, and that's how I kept on going. But it wasn't easy, because when I got to USC, I had so many classes. But I also took dance classes, I took vocal classes, I took all sorts of dramatic classes. Like I said, the Ebony Showcase Theater opened the door for me. So therefore, it was life or death for me, because after all the things that I had gone through growing up and wanting to escape as a kid, I just wanted to banish those things and forget about those things and not service on them, and move ahead and see what I could accomplish on my own. And it wasn't easy, not by a long shot, you know. But then when I wasn't working as an actor or performer, I started writing. And that's how I really moved ahead as a columnist. I became the first black syndicated columnist. Worldwide News took me on, and especially when Hedda passed away, because people knew I'd worked with Hedda Hopper, and she gave me a lot of connections. And when she died, I made those connections work for me. And my column appeared in about maybe 110 newspapers around the country. And when I went on tour, promoting the column, that's how I met other people around the country. I went to San Francisco, I went to Chicago or Detroit, I went to Texas, I went to Atlanta, Miami, and all those places. And my picture and my column appeared in their newspapers, you know, and their organs that were available to them. And that was very, very important for me to let my name get out there. I appeared on radio and television, and I was learning at the same time how to promote myself, sell myself, you know. And when I had a show to do, I would do a show. If I had a concert in LA or in San Francisco, I would do that. But eventually, you know, I had an opportunity. Well, I became the CEO of Players International. I helmed 3 or 4 magazines, National Entertainment Magazine, Players Magazine, In the Know, Michael St.John's Foxy People, and I mean, it was quite exciting.
I used to have dreams. No, I used to have nightmares about you. I would take a hatchet to you, cut you into pieces, and feed you to the dogs, so you would never do this to anyone else.
Where did the magazine lead you?
Well, being at Players Magazine, it was a tremendous asset for me, because when I became the editor-in-chief of Players International, with all the other magazines they created because I was there, the market really responded in a big way, which excited the publishers, of course. That meant they wanted to own my name and everything. But my agent, that Frida Payne, my dear friend Frida Payne, the singer, introduced me to her agent and manager, and he insisted on talking with my publisher, and after a year, and said that no, you cannot own Michael's name, etc. We want a better contract agreement. So that was very upsetting to them, because I was traveling the country. I was doing television and radio shows every place. The readership was building monthly. It was a tremendous difference from the past of the publications, you know. Now magazine was created when I was there, you know, and they even had, because of Rona Barrett having the Rona Barrett Entertainment Magazine, they wanted a Michael St.John Foxy People. So I was part of the logo for one of the entertainment magazines. That was another first for a black writer to have in publishing or in the entertainment world. And so this is when I started going on tours. I toured all the major cities of the country. I got to know the people. I even gave lectures at colleges and high schools and at drama workshops. They all wanted me to talk about the business and my experiences, etc. I even went to South America with a couple of friends of mine from USC. I went to Rio and experienced a few things down there that I didn't expect, because at that time, well, the drug scene was pretty intense, especially cocaine. They were growing all sorts of things down there that I wasn't aware of. But I was glad that I learned about certain things. They had parades and great nudity and things of that sort that we didn't have in Hollywood. Even though Hollywood was notorious, I didn't expect that. Then I experienced a murder there that a friend of mine was involved with. So I had to help him get back to the States, because he belonged to a very powerful political family, and I helped him get out of the country back to the States, and I left soon after that because I didn't want to be mixed up with any scandal at all, especially with my being associated with one of the major entertainment magazines here in the States, you know. So it was all right. But it was found out that he really wasn't responsible, that the person that he was involved with was ill already and, well, was cleaned up a bit. But still, in the eyes of many people, there was murder, naturally, was involved with, you know, the American relative of a major family in the States. And and it so happens that that person is still alive and functioning politically even to this day. Much older, of course, but he's still functioning. So I went through a lot of experiences like that. And when the publisher didn't want to cooperate, he still wanted to own my name, and I would be restricted in every way, then I decided I would drop out of the being the editor-in-chief of the Players International, and I got an offer from San Francisco, KDIE Radio, in San Francisco, which was a major station. And a lot of people to this moment, to this day, remember my coming aboard there. And I took off with Philip Michael Thomas, who went with me up there. He decided he wanted to try his luck there. He had relatives there as well. And but when he got to San Francisco, a few months later, he auditioned for his hit show, and it became a second to Don Johnson, to his name of his, I forget the name of his show. Steve, do you remember the name of Philip Michael Thomas's hit TV series? I'll put you on the spot.
Miami Vice.
Of course, once we got to San Francisco, Philip Michael Thomas was anxious to continue his career, because he had done the Whack Attack as far as the last film on television. It was wonderful. He's a wonderful actor. He had great plans, etc. And I went immediately into KDI Radio. Every morning I would be interviewing celebrities or anyone who came to San Francisco, appearing from Hollywood or from around the world. It was quite exciting for about 3 hours a day with Barry Pope, my co-host, on the show. It was a learning experience for me, that as well. Even though I had done radio in Hollywood a bit with, I did some singing and entertaining with several people in Hollywood, you know. Jerry Gordon was the director of the radio show for CBS.
Stuck in a rut, getting nowhere fast. Ooh, humdrum blues, fighting the future, mad at the past. Well, humdrum blues. Oh, honey, when you ain't got money, then you just can't do as you choose. Just gotta live with the humdrum blues. Well,
And we did a weekly, once a week show for CBS. It was a learning effort as well. So when I got to San Francisco, so I wasn't, let's face it, I was no stranger to radio because I had started back east in Philadelphia. But it was a different format. So therefore, I really had to bone up and get with it with the times, you know. When I got to San Francisco, it was nice. People were very receptive. They liked my personality and the way I talked and the way I went around the city meeting people. I helped senior citizens and with high school people who had ambition about the industry, and I boned up about what was interesting there and everything. And that's when Philip Michael Thompson and I roomed together for a while until he got himself together. And when he auditioned for Miami Vice, he co-starred with Don Johnson. That's when he returned to. Not to return to LA, he went to Florida, Miami, Florida. And he went down there, and the rest is history. You know, he said that he wouldn't change. I'm not going to change if I become a major name in the industry. Michael, I'm going to do this and that. But I found out once you hit the center spot, a major spot in the industry, no matter how we feel before we make it, when the money starts coming in, and all the newspapers and people and the fans start crowding around you, it forces you, if you are not ready for it, to change a hell of a lot. And so when he changed a lot, he started getting his family to as bodyguards and things like that. And I was surprised because it wasn't the full Michael Thomas that was so close to me, etc. He was still Phil, yes. But I saw that he was forced, he felt that he had to change his whole persona. And I knew darn well, no matter what happened in my life or whatever, I couldn't change because I have a big mouth and people knew me as that and all my life, so why should I change? You know, I just have to go out there, perform and give my kind of love and attention and respect to the public and hope they, would follow me and support me. And that's why I think I've lasted so long, because people sort of see me from the beginning, and I'm still here, pontificating and talking and cheering on other people who have talent, because I respect people who have talent. But when I was in San Francisco, the doors opened up for me tremendously, because I did travel a lot. I did get around the country, and when I was asked to go to New York and to do other things, I co-hosted shows and TV shows. The Joe Franklin show, I co-hosted his show. He was a man who was well known in New York City, all around in New York, period. And he was syndicated as well, the Joe Franklin show, and I was asked to appear there. But so interestingly, when I returned to Hollywood to get some awards, Eartha Kitt made an appearance. And a friend of mine from Players Magazine, he helmed another publication there. He said, I want you to meet Eartha Kitt at this event, Michael. And he said, I'm picking her up. She's going to be with me. He says, I'll nod to you when you should come over to the table and I'll introduce you to Eartha Kitt. I said, okay, fine. Because I admired Eartha and the things that she accomplished. And she was exciting, I thought, no matter what, she was exciting, different. And so I was there, I was talking to a lot of other celebrities, and there were tons of them there. And when I looked over to my friend's table, and oh boy, he nodded me to come over. And I went over and he says, oh, Eartha, this is Michael St. John. And Eartha looked up at me and stared and says, oh, how do you do? And she turned her head. Now, you don't do that to Michael St. John. I'm from Morton, Pennsylvania, and we don't act like that. We're not phonies like that. And I said, excuse me? I said, yeah, I'm Michael St. John, and you're Eartha Kitt. You're from the South, and I know how you've risen to fame. And she says, oh, really? I pulled her wig off and threw it on the table. She jumped up and screamed, oh! I will kill you, you SOB. And she was rolling her fist up, trying to really throw a punch at me or whatever. And my friend stopped her, held her hand, and a couple of the other people at the table pulled her up. I'll kill him, how dare he do this to me? I'm Eartha Kitt. I said, yeah, I see it, you're Eartha Kitt, bald. And they pulled her out of the Ambassador Hotel, Ambassador of Grove there. And took her out, and she was screaming all the way. People were laughing and applauding like it was planned or something, And because after what happened, I was a little bit embarrassed because it was a public display. But how dare she, look down me, in a very condescending way and said, "Oh yes." I said, "Yeah, oh yeah, where's your hair?" I just wouldn't stand for it. And so my friend said, "Oh, Michael, what have you done to yourself?" I said, "I've done what people expect me to do, to defend myself. No one has a right to look down on anyone else as if they're nothing, as if just because they are, in a higher place of fame or whatever. Everyone deserves respect." And that's what I've always done, and I refuse to change my attitude about that, even to this moment. Everyone has a part of them that should be respected and applauded, just being human. And that's what I always, contend when I'm speaking to an audience, even when they're applauding me thunderously or laughing. But still, I respect them for being there, taking the time to listen to my tales, my history of survival in the industry. And this is the way I've been taught all my life by my parents, my brothers and sisters, etc. I will not change. I don't care who you are. So that's something very extraordinary I've learned about being in the limelight, etc. And I tell you, when I met Laurence Olivier and Elizabeth Taylor and all those famous people, and Lawrence Harvey people, and they invited me to England. And when I did go to England and made some appearances there, it was quite a thing because it was like a family. And that meant a lot to me because I learned how people who are secure with their fame and with who they are just like brothers and sisters or just a family, Of course, when I went, I was invited to go to Venice, and Lawrence Harvey really invited me. He says, "Please come, because you'll all enjoy Venice." He says, "You will enjoy the gondolas and the singing and the Grand Mark Square." And I said, "Okay, fine." So I got a chance to get over there, and I stayed right on the canal there, where the hotels are really near Grand Mark Square. And so one of my friends who I saw from the States, from Hollywood, a wealthy woman, and she owned a grand restaurant here in Los Angeles. And she says, "Michael, I want to just get a gondola and sing with the gondoliers and have fun and this evening." I said, "Oh, that'd be fun." Her name was Jo. She was a thin little white lady who enjoyed being with me. She said, "You make me laugh and have fun. I'm glad I got here in Venice while you were here." And she had a person who was like her assistant, her person who looked after her. She was a gal who was weighed about 300 pounds, and she was from Texas. She had an accent. She was funny. I liked her very much. But when she found that Jo and I was going to be in a gondola together and do some singing, she said, "I want to be with you guys." But she could barely fit in the gondola. She says, "I am going to get in the gondola no matter what." So when Jo and I got in the gondola, she decided to jump in the gondola, and she bore a hole in the gondola, and we were sinking in the canal. Jo says, "We're sinking, there's a hole. You big fat hussy, you bore a hole in this gondola." I was embarrassed, and the gondolier started singing "Oh Maria," or whatever the Italian was. I said, "I can't swim." So Jo says, "If you can't swim, hang on to my breasts and we'll sink together." So guess what? The paparazzi took pictures of my holding on to her breasts, sinking the gondola.
Oh my God!
It was hilarious. It was like a movie. It was like a movie, and people were applauding like they were shooting a film. And so they got me out of the gondola and took me up to our respective rooms in the of the canal, and they washed me down because the water was really diseased, etc. And people started laughing and applauding, etc., etc. And it was quite a scene. I had a couple pictures through the years, but that was so long ago. Moving about in the country, I had lost most of the photos for that, but it was quite of an experience. And Lawrence Harvey thought it was hilarious as well. He says, "Michael, my friend, do you realize what it looked like we were filming a scene for one of my movies? I said, believe me, I didn't feel that way because I really could not swim at that time. And so he laughed. He said, but the people enjoyed it, and that's the important thing. He says, you're an entertainer. You're a comic, really. I said, no, I'm not. I'm a person, a black little boy who could not swim in a canal that was filled with all sorts of diseases. Okay? And he says, you are great. And he hugged me. He says, I'm glad that I asked you to come along. It was quite an experience, I'll tell you.
Even now, I'm sometimes afraid to go to sleep because when I wake up, I don't know what I'm going to find. And you call yourself a father.
So, Mike, I've heard some stories about you and James Dean. Care to share that with us?
My time with James Dean, the couple of years that I spent with him, I was introduced to him by a writer who was working with Betty White on her television show, and she said that you should meet this young new actor, James Dean. I said, oh yeah, he sounds very interesting. She said, I think you guys will get along very well. I wonder why she said it in that way. And she smiled. I said, okay. So she had a little dinner at her house above Franklin Avenue in Hollywood. A lovely little house where she was married to a minister, a young minister. She was older, but she was married to a young minister, a very nice guy. And we were about 4 or 5 people from the industry was there. And James Dean came in and looked at me and smiled. He says, this must be this Michael St.John. And she says, yes, and I smiled, we talked. And so we got along very quickly and talked about the industry, about music, about dancing. And he knew Eartha Kitt as well. As a matter of fact, he was studying the type of dance that she was involved in as well. So, and I had always, of course, been involved in and loved all sorts of modern dancing and interpretive dancing, etc. And he made excuses during the week to give me a call when he was free. We would go to a restaurant and talk about music, or we would discuss what's in the industry. He admired Alec Guinness, by the way, and of course I admired Alec Guinness too. And so we would he would pick me up. He had a motorcycle at one point, and he would pick me up on campus, because I stayed on campus. He'd pick me up on campus, and he'd drive me up to Griffith Park and observatory up there, and we just stand and walk around up there, and we were very, very close, but put it that way. And I enjoyed him, he enjoyed me, and we shared a lot of personal feelings, etc. He says, you're so easy to talk with, and he was. He was easy for me to relate certain things, very personal, private things. He felt safe and comfortable, so we got along very, very much. So and there was a point when he had flashes of relationships with girls that he knew darn well he couldn't follow through completely with, but he got involved with Pia Angeli, an actress. I think she was on a contract to Warner Brothers, and she got involved with a singer, put it that way, and she was going to marry him, this singer, and then he flushed off from her. He was devastated by it. Then he got involved with a musician at the Philharmonic Orchestra in LA, and he didn't trust any. He said, you can't trust these broads, I said, well, and so he was supposed to have a date with one of these musicians, and this girl, really, I think she played the cello or whatever, and she decided that she didn't want to go out with Jimmy one time, and because she had a rehearsal with another musician, and she was living out in the valley. She says, I can't be with you, Jimmy, tonight. And he called me, he says, I'm going to pick you up off the campus, and I'm going to drive you out to the valley. I'm going to find out what she's really doing. Would you do it for me? I said, what time? He said, it was late at night. I said, Jimmy, black people can't go and be in the valley at night after 10 o'clock. And so he said, you'll be with me. So he picked me up, we went in the valley, and took me, he parked away, a block away from the house where she was living. He said, I know if she's rehearsing it at her house there, that she said she would be with this guy, I want you to peep in the window and see what they're really doing. I said, are you kidding? Me doing this in the valley at this time of night? And he says, do it, please. I said, okay. So I got out of the car, went to the side of the house and looked into the window. And if she was rehearsing with the cello, it was a strange kind of cello, because what I saw them doing, it was something, not the cello that she was playing with. And I went back and told Jimmy what I saw, and he says he was silent. He started the car. He started driving. Then he parked after about 5 minutes away from that woman's house, the girl's house. He stopped and parked. He unzipped his trousers and he masturbated terribly. And I looked straight ahead as if he wasn't masturbating. And he says, I'm a bad boy. I said, well, you're a very interesting person. I said, well, you're an actor, aren't you? And I said, you let it all hang out? He says, I guess I do. And he zipped himself back up and he drove me back to the campus, and nothing else was said. I said, well, it was quite an experience to have a person like Jimmy Dean express his frustration, his anger that way right in front of me, you know. But he had other things, traits as well, and other inhibitions as well, and other things that I don't want to talk about. But I experienced a lot of things with him. But he was a wonderful guy. He was pretty much like he was on camera. But he was heartbroken because Marlon Brando, every time he called Marlon, he says, I call him Marlon. He didn't want to talk to me. But his wife, you know, she always made excuses. And because Marlon thought he was copying him as an actor. All his little physical ways of expressing himself on camera, trying to build a character, he copied Marlon. And Marlon resented it terribly. But Jimmy kept calling him no matter what, because he really idolized Marlon Brando. And because I knew Marlon Brando myself, I knew as well how Marlon felt about him, really, you know. But Jimmy, I really idolized him, and then too, it was very strange because he idolized Alec Guinness as well. He liked Alec Guinness, he liked Marlon Brando, he liked those type of actors that seem to move and speak honestly and freely and as a character. And that's why he tried to adapt all of those mannerisms with any character he played in any film he did do that the public was able to see. It was interesting to see and observe and learn how other actors affect actors that you idolize, you know? So that's the main thing I want to reveal about James Dean and my relationship with him. It was stronger than what I'm pontificating and talking about, but we have a very close, loving relationship. I can say it, I can put it that way, because I learned a lot from him, you know.
I understand you had a secret experience with LSD.
And many people ask me because of the drug scene and everything in Hollywood has been known for since the silent film days, you know, since John Barrymore and all the Earl Flynn and all the scandals they had, you know. Well, what about the drug scene and how was I ever exposed? Well, I was exposed to it, but I didn't realize that I was being exposed to it, because the first time that I really realized I had gotten caught in that scene was when Grace Kelly and Alec Guinness did their last film for MGM called The Swan. And they had a big party up in the Hollywood Hills, and Dan Gelly, everyone knows about, he was a dancing king, as well with Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire, etc. And Dan was a friend of mine, of course. And he and Rock Hudson and all those people, and Marlon Brando, they were all at this party. Of course, Grace Kelly that was a big moment, last moment with in the Hollywood scene in that way. And they said, Michael, we want to take you up there because you should be involved and know the people of the industry. I said, fantastic! I love Grace Kelly. She's from Philly, you know. So I love the idea of being around, you know, people, someone like that, was well known and respected. She was going to marry the Prince of Monaco, so naturally I wanted to be there. So when I got to Jenny Sims, I found Jenny Sims was there, and she was a wonderful singer. She did songs like Amore, Amore, Besame Mucho. She was famous for those songs, those Latin songs, you know. So we talked, and when I saw her, we went out on the balcony in this huge mansion, and we were looking all over Hollywood, you know. It was wonderful. It was a beautiful evening. It was warm. It was very nice. And in the main major room, they had Jamaican musicians, you know. They were playing the drums and the kind of rhythms that, you know, is contagious, make people want to dance and have fun, you know. And Grace Kelly and Alec Guinness came in, etc. And even Grace Kelly got up to do an imitation of a Busty Brown, of a stripper. And so Alec Guinness said, "You didn't learn that in Philly." She says, "No, I never did something like this in Philly." I will never forget her reaction to that, you know. And Ann Miller and all these people there, Marlon Brando, Dan Daly, and were there, and a lot of the starlets were there as well, you know. And then while I was out there with the singer, we noticed all the lights, after a while, all the lights were being turned off and candles were being lighted, you know. And she says, Jenny says, "Let's go in and find out what's going on." And we went inside. We found that all of the people, the guests, were naked. Women were wearing tassels around their breasts, and men were wearing some sort of feathers around their penises, and the Jamaican musicians were wearing feathers around themselves. I said, "My God, Jenny, what is this? What is this?" She said, "Oh my God." And they looked at me, and I said, "I'm not taking off my clothes. I have the mumps." She said, "You don't have the mumps, Michael." I said, "I have the mumps." You know, I was going to take off. Listen, I'm from outside of Philadelphia. We can take off our clothes except in our own bedrooms. I was not going to do that. I said, "What about you?" She says, "I'm with you, kid. I'm not going to go this route." And then Dan Daly says, "Michael," he says, "How are you feeling? You want a drink or so?" I say, "I think I need a drink." So he says, "Okay." So he went and poured me a drink out of this big bowl, I remember. And he came over and he gave this big glass, and I started drinking this, and it tastes a little strong because I'm not a drinker. You know, I very seldom I drank anything out of it, unless with a party for a wedding or, you know, a typical Hollywood gathering. So I started drinking this, and I started getting a little dizzy. I started seeing double. I started hearing voices. I looked around, the voices I thought were surrounding me. And so Dan says, "What's wrong with you, kid?" I said, "I feel a little weak. I think it's alcohol." I thought maybe that was the effect of the alcohol. He said, "Maybe go to one of the rooms and relax a little bit and you'll be okay." I said, "Okay, Dan." So I made my way up this winding staircase, looked back, and the people seemed to be multiplying in number. I said, "My God, more people have arrived here." And I didn't realize it was just my imagination. It was just the effect of what I was drinking. And so I opened the door for one of the rooms, and I saw all these people. It was Charles Lawton in there. A lot of these very famous people sitting around, naked. Charles Lawton was in a bathtub, sucking on a rubber form of sorts of a woman. It was not a woman at all. It was I couldn't make it out. It was strange. And there were people, you know, in a couple of beds were on the floor doing, it was music, strange music. And then someone pulled me into the room, and they started taking my clothes off. And I tried to stop them, like I was caught in a haze or something, like it was gauze. And suddenly I realized I was helpless. I just kept imagining, and it was a strange feeling. And then I felt them pulling me on the bed, and they were tying my arms to something. I realized it was a post or something. And then suddenly everything went black. And then I woke up hours later in the room by myself, and I felt that my whole body was sticky with some sort of, like a cum or some sort of sexual thing. It was a horrible feeling, and I'd untied myself and broke loose, and I went to the loo, to the restroom, and started washing myself because I was naked. I saw my clothes on the floor, etc. And I put myself together a little bit, and I got out of the room, and I was still shaking, and I went on the staircase, and I saw Dan. Dan said, "What is wrong? What happened to you? I was looking for you." And he says, "Were you upstairs?" I said, "You told me to go upstairs." And he said, "You look awful. What's happened to you?" I said, "I don't know." And so Rock Hudson came over to Dan. He says, "What's wrong with this kid?" And Dan says, "Something happened upstairs." They whispered, you know. He says, Rock says, "I'm going to be leaving here. Something has happened here." And Dan says, "Would you take Michael back over to USC?" He said, "Yeah, I'll take him back over there," because they all knew where USC was, of course. And so Rock says, "I'm going to take you to my house first. I'm going to make sure you take a good shower, and we'll decide what to do, because you're in no shape to go back to our campus. Do you understand that?" I said, "Yeah." And so he took me back to his house. He had a 3-room house in the Hollywood Hills. They're not too far from the party. And he made sure I took a good shower, and he says, "You need a rest, because what you experienced tonight, I'm going to tell you, it was one of those freak things that happens in Hollywood sometimes. And you're in no condition to go back to campus, because the guys there, they're not dummies. They know if you've been to a Hollywood party, like anywhere in Hollywood this time of year, that what happens." I said, "You think?" He says, "I don't think, I know." So he said, "I'm going to let you stay here with me. I'll give you breakfast, and I'll drive you back in the morning." And so that's what he did. But when I woke up in the morning, he gave me breakfast and lectured to me, never to go to a party like this again. If you go to a party like this, don't take any drinks unless you know exactly what you're drinking, because I told him what I had done. He says, "That's the thing. He gave you LSD," because he said those drinks was filled with that kind of thing. And I said, "Thank you very much." So that's when I became very close to Rock, because Rock protected me. No matter what they say about Rock Hudson, he protected me. He in every way possible took me back to USC, and from that moment on, anytime I needed something, advice or whatever, when I was at Universal Studios, I could call on Rock in his bungalow, and he'd talk with me. Or when I went to a premiere, he said, "You drive with me, no matter what." And so our relationship all through the years, many years, that Rock was really very warm and very kind. If there was a job or something that I needed, or I needed his advice about meeting someone, I gave him a call. He was there for me. So there was great respect through the years with Rock Hudson. No matter what the gossip about Rock Hudson, it might have been true, but my relationship with Rock Hudson was quite noble. He respected me totally. I want to make that clear with everybody.
Give me a break. After what you put Mama through, and what you did to my piano, all I have to say is fuck you.
How long you been staying?